The story begins with the protagonist, perhaps a weary traveler, an investigative journalist, or a lost backpacker, making their way toward a remote village tucked away from the modern world. The journey itself feels like a descent into isolation. The roads grow narrower, the trees denser, and the air heavier with an unspoken tension. By the time the protagonist reaches the village, the sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows over the rustic cottages and cobbled pathways. At first glance, the village appears quaint, even charming, a relic of a simpler time. Smoke curls from chimneys, children play near a weathered stone well, and villagers go about their daily chores with quiet efficiency. Yet something feels off. The smiles of the locals are polite, but strained, their eyes flickering toward the horizon as if tracking the sun's descent. When the protagonist asks for lodging, the villagers oblige, but their hospitality is edged with unease. An old woman selling herbs at the market avoids direct eye contact. A farmer leading his sheep home pauses just a moment too long before answering a question about the nearest inn. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with deep-set eyes, hesitates before handing over the key to a room, his fingers lingering on the iron as if reluctant to let go. "You'll be staying the night then?" he asks, his voice carefully neutral. When the protagonist confirms, the innkeeper's jaw tightens. "Best be inside before dark," he mutters, almost to himself. As the protagonist unpacks, they notice odd details. A heavy wooden bar leaning against the inside of the door, windows latched with iron hooks, faint scratch marks along the door frame. Downstairs, the tavern hums with subdued conversation, but the moment the protagonist enters, the room falls into an unnatural hush. The villagers exchange glances, their laughter forced. Then, as dusk settles, the warnings grow more direct. A village elder, gripping the protagonist's arm with surprising strength, hisses, "Lock your door tonight. No matter what you hear, no matter what, do not go outside." The protagonist nods, but the warning only fuels their curiosity. Why such fear? What lurks in the darkness of this peaceful-seeming village? And as the last light fades, the first distant sound echoes through the valley, a whisper, a howl, or perhaps something worse. The village seems to exhale as the sun dips below the horizon, its golden light retreating like a tide pulling away before a storm. The protagonist, still unsettled by the villagers' strange behavior, lingers near the hearth in the dimly lit tavern. The air is thick with the scent of burning wood and something else, an undercurrent of tension, like the charged silence before thunder cracks. One by one, the villagers finish their drinks in hurried gulps, their eyes darting toward the darkening windows. The laughter from earlier has vanished, replaced by stiff nods and hushed good nights. The innkeeper moves methodically, bolting the shutters with hands that betray the slightest tremor. Then, the old woman from the market, the one who had avoided the protagonist's gaze earlier, approaches. Her gnarled fingers clutch a shawl tightly around her shoulders, as if the cold isn't the only thing she's warding off. "You're the outsider staying upstairs?" she asks, though she already knows the answer. Her voice is low, barely above a whisper, yet it carries the weight of years. The protagonist nods, and the woman leans in, her breath smelling of herbs and damp earth. "Listen well," she says, her eyes reflecting the flickering firelight like pools of black water. "When the last light fades, this village is no longer ours. The dark belongs to them." A chill slithers down the protagonist's spine. "Them?" The woman doesn't answer directly. Instead, she presses a small, cloth-wrapped bundle into their hand, a sprig of dried rosemary, a twist of iron, something old and ritualistic. "Bar your door." Do not open it, no matter what you hear, no matter how familiar the voice, no matter how desperate the plea. If you value your life, you will stay inside until dawn. Before the protagonist can press further, the innkeeper interrupts, his voice sharp. Enough, Marta. Let the stranger be. The old woman pulls back, but her gaze lingers, heavy with unspoken fear. As the last villagers disappear into their homes, the innkeeper turns to the protagonist, his expression grim. You heard her. Lock yourself in, and if you're wise, you'll blow out your candle before midnight. Why? The protagonist asks, frustration and curiosity warring in their chest. The innkeeper hesitates, then shakes his head. Some things are better left unseen. With that, he snuffs out the lantern, plunging the room into near darkness. Outside, the wind rises, carrying with it a sound, something between a whisper and a rustle, like dry leaves scraping against stone, or claws against wood. And then silence. The kind of silence that feels like waiting. The last embers of twilight bleed into blackness, and the village becomes a silhouette of itself, windows shuttered, doors barred, the streets empty as if abandoned mid-breath. The protagonist sits alone in their room at the inn, the only light a guttering candle that paints nervous shadows on the walls. The innkeeper's warning hums in their skull like a struck bell. Blow out your candle before midnight. At first, there is only silence. Not the quiet of a sleeping town, but something heavier, as if the night itself is holding its breath. Then, a scrape, faint but unmistakable, something moving just outside the door. The protagonist freezes, ears straining. The sound doesn't come again, but now there's a new sensation, the prickling certainty of being watched. The air grows thick, sour with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. Then, a whisper. Not from the door, from the window. It's too soft to make out words, just a murmur of syllables that don't quite sound human. The protagonist turns slowly, heart hammering, and sees nothing. Just the warped glass of the window pane, black as a pit. A child's laugh rings out from the street below, high and bright. It's wrong. No child would be out now, not with the village locked tight. The laugh twists into a wet gurgle, cut off abruptly. Something heavy drags itself across the roof. The protagonist stumbles back from the window, knocking over the candle. The flame dies, plunging the room into darkness. For a heartbeat, there's perfect stillness. Then the knocking starts. 3 slow, deliberate raps on the door. A voice, sweet, familiar, the voice of a loved one long gone, calls their name. Let me in, it pleads. Please, it's so cold out here. The protagonist's hand hovers over the bar. Reason wars with instinct. That voice, it knows them. It can't be a trick. Can it? Outside, the wind rises, howling through the eaves like a chorus of anguished voices. The knocking grows louder, more insistent. The door shudders in its frame, and beneath it all, underneath the mimicry and the terror, a new sound. The wet, rhythmic click of something breathing just on the other side of the wood. The voice outside the door is unbearable in its familiarity. It calls again, soft, trembling, achingly human, and this time it sobs. The sound cracks something open in the protagonist's chest. Logic screams at them to stay put, but the heart is a traitor. It can't be, they whisper, fingers brushing the door's rough wood. The bar is heavy in their hands, slick with cold sweat. Another sob. They're coming! Please! That does it. The protagonist throws open the bar. The door bursts inward before they can even turn the knob. For one suspended second, there is only the night, vast and black and breathing. Then the thing from the dark steps into the candle's guttering light. It wears the face of someone the protagonist once loved. The smile is wrong, too wide, too many teeth. The air curdles with the stench of rotting meat and wet fur as the thing lurches forward, its movements a grotesque parody of human grace. The voice that comes from its throat is still sweet, still pleading. Why did you make me wait? Even as its fingers elongate into claws. The protagonist stumbles back, but it's too late. The thing is inside now. The rules have been broken. Somewhere in the village, a dog begins to howl. Then another. Then, one by one, every door and window in the village rattles as many somethings, turn their attention toward the inn. The last thing the protagonist sees before the candle dies completely is the way the thing's eyes reflect the light, not like a human's, like a wolf's. The candle snuffs out, plunging the room into perfect darkness. For a heartbeat, there is only the sound of the protagonist's ragged breath and the creak of floorboards under the thing's weight. Then, a wet, clicking laugh. The air shifts as the creature moves, its presence seeming to warp the space around it. The protagonist backs into a wall, fingers scrambling for anything to defend themselves. Their hand closes around the iron poker from the hearth, cold, heavy, real in a world that has suddenly become nightmare. A sliver of moonlight spills through the cracked shutter, just enough to see. The thing in the doorway is no longer wearing its stolen face. What stands before them is something older than the village, older than the stories whispered to keep children indoors at night. Its body is a patchwork of shadows and stretched skin, limbs bending in ways that make the eyes ache. Its mouth is a jagged tear across its face, lined with teeth like rusted nails. But the worst part is the recognition. Because now, in the half-light, the protagonist sees them, the faces beneath the creature's skin. Dozens of them, shifting like reflections in a black pond. The baker's daughter who vanished last winter. The shepherd who wandered off during the harvest moon. All the villagers who ever broke the rules, ever stepped outside after dark. We were lonely, the thing sighs, its voice a chorus of the lost. Outside, the night comes alive with answering cries. Shapes move in the streets, some on all fours, some slithering, all converging on the inn. The protagonist understands now why the windows were barred, why the warnings were so desperate. The village isn't hiding from monsters, it's feeding them, and tonight there will be a new face added to the collection. The moment the creature lunges, instinct takes over. The protagonist swings the iron poker, not with skill, but with the wild, panicked strength of someone who knows they are already dead. The metal connects. A hiss splits the air, acrid as burning hair. The thing recoils, its many faces twisting in something like surprise. Iron. The old woman's warning flashes through the protagonist's mind. Iron hooks on the windows, rosemary and salt. Not superstition, but survival. A shriek erupts from the street below. The village is awake now, but not with human voices. The night is alive with skittering limbs and guttural cries, drawn by the scent of fear. The thing in the doorway smiles its jagged smile. Run, it whispers, delighted. And so they do. The stairs groan underfoot as the protagonist stumbles down into the tavern, now a graveyard of overturned chairs and shattered mugs. The front door hangs open, a trap or a mercy, it doesn't matter. They burst into the street, where the moonlight paints everything in silver and shadow. Figures emerge from the alleys. Some still wear the tattered remains of village clothes, their bodies stretched and broken. Others are nothing but teeth and hunger. The protagonist sprints past the empty market stalls, toward the tree line at the edge of town. Behind them, The inn's roof collapses inward, swallowed by something too large to name. The forest looms ahead, a wall of grasping branches. A hand closes around the protagonist's wrist. The old woman from before, her shawl torn, her eyes wide with terror. Not the woods, she gasps. Never the woods at night. Too late. The trees shudder. Something older than the village, older than the thing in the inn, exhales from the darkness. The last thing the protagonist hears is the old woman's wail, cut short. Then, silence. Dawn breaks over the village like a held breath finally released. The first light touches the cobblestones, the thatched roofs, the empty streets, all perfectly intact, as if the horrors of the night had never happened. The inn stands undisturbed, its door repaired, its windows gleaming in the morning sun. The market stalls are neatly arranged, ready for another day of trade. A child skips past the well, humming. In the tavern, the innkeeper serves ale to the early risers, his hand steady. When asked about last night's traveler, he merely shrugs. Must have moved on before sunrise, he says, wiping down the counter. No one questions it. No one ever does. At the edge of the village, where the forest begins, a single item lies abandoned in the dirt, a traveler's pack, its contents spilled and forgotten. A gust of wind flutters the pages of a journal left open, the final entry half finished, the ink smeared as if by frantic fingers. They don't go out after dark because the rest is illegible. Deep in the woods, something stirs. A new voice joins the chorus of whispers, still raw with terror. And high above, the village bell tolls, clear and bright, calling the people to another day of work, of life, of pretending, waiting for the next stranger to ask too many questions, waiting for the next night to fall. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.